Natasha, and welcome to our studio series. Today we're going to explore this vibrant New Orleans street scene painted by my dad. Step by step, we will unpack the layers of values and colors to create your very own rendition of the street scene. We'll be using acrylics for the underpainting and oils for the second part. Check out the description below for a list of suggested materials. There's no doubt about it. Street scenes are one of the best subjects for painters to show off their skill in creating dynamic, energetic, vibrant compositions. With so many elements to play on, like perspective, atmosphere, dramatic lighting. But perhaps one of the most alluring elements of a street scene is the human connection. It draws us in. Evoking the senses helps create this feeling. For me, I feel like I can hear the sounds of the hustle and bustle of a city. There's a busyness in the mark making that enhances this effect. It's colorful, vibrant, and it's meant to draw you in. Just like the signs beckoning in the patrons strolling by the various establishments along the strip. So, let's get into it. So what we're going to start with is a watery red acrylic paint. So you're going to add quite a bit of water to your mixture. And what my dad's using here is a cadmium red with a tiny touch of either ultramarine or dioxazine purple to mute it down a little bit. Check out how loose these figures are. My dad hasn't even distinguished in the individual legs of these figures. He's just sort of blobbed them in, creating their outward form. He suggested a head, perhaps an arm, but really staying away from any sort of detail. If you've ever taken a class with me, you know that I always insist on starting as loose as possible. What we want to do is bounce around the canvas and make sure that all of our elements have the proper amount of real estate required to fill up the canvas and create a harmonious composition. One thing I see people doing often is really bringing one area of the canvas to completion or too close to completion before moving on to other areas. What we want to do is sort of feel out the canvas, suss out where we're going to place our figures, and leave lots of room to make adjustments if we feel like we need to. So be loose, don't commit to anything, and use lots and lots of water in your mixture. These lines here, my dad just sort of ghosting in the perspective lines. They don't represent anything specific, but they'll help you stay on track with the perspective when you start blocking in things like doors and windows. Here he's just locking in the darkest shapes, like the pants of the main figures, sort of like anchors. Later, there will be a lot of paint getting thrown at the canvas, and some of the drawing is sure to get lost in the process, and that's okay. These dark anchors can kind of help you avoid getting lost. They're almost like markers to help find your way again. Another thing to note about these figures is that their heads are all along the same level. The figures in the foreground and the figures farther down the street in the background all have relatively the same height in the painting. What we notice is that the feet of the figures in the background farther down the street do follow the lines of perspective, but the heads stay relatively the same height all along the picture plane. Once we've completed the drawing phase of the painting, we'll start blocking in the shadows. Sometimes I call this chasing the shadows. So what I like to do is squint at the reference photo and see what big areas of shadows I can fill in. We're still looking for big shapes here. We're not getting into any details. We still have water in our mixture, and any areas that we need to be particularly dark, we can layer up. So the general rule for underpaintings is transparent dark underpaintings and opaque lighter overpaintings. So we're keeping things dark and watery. Another thing to note is we're using cool colors here. Cool, transparent, dark layers. The overpainting is where we will showcase our more opaque, lighter layers. The general rule for underpaintings is they are dark and transparent layers. If you need to really darken up an area, instead of applying a thick layer of dark paint, what you'll do is you will layer up. So you will do multiple layers of that color to really push it into the darkness that you need. Washing over large portions of the composition here with a big brush. This does a few things. It's a quick way to get rid of any white or unpainted patches that could pose problems in the final layer. It sort of unifies the layer of paint that contributes to a more consistent look to the final work. And finally, it's a nice way to introduce a unifying feel to specific passages of the painting. For instance, you might give a warmer sort of red, brown, orange wash to an area that will be sunlit, and maybe a cooler blue, green, or violet wash to more shaded areas. But don't overthink it. Just play. It's a good idea to have paper towel at hand when you're doing this, to quickly wipe off paint if your washes are a little over enthusiastic. Lovely little pops of yellow happening here. Let's talk about why the sky is yellow. Underpaintings are a great opportunity to inject a little bit of chromatic interest, especially in areas that you know are going to get tamed down or muted with more grayish tones in the overpainting. So don't be afraid to let those colors in your underpainting pop. At this stage, you'll often feel it necessary to go back and re-establish your dark anchor points. In the beginning, when there's a lot of white canvas showing, these might have appeared really dark. But now, not so much. And now on to oils. Make sure you have your palette knives ready. It's tempting to get drawn into details of something like these windows of the buildings in the background. You need something to suggest windows, but you have to avoid painting every window. That is not what painting is all about. Also note, he is not painting windows. The knife work is depicting the facade of the building. The windows are from the underpainting. So there's two lessons here. One, the value of the underpainting is important here. If it's too light, we can't use it for the windows. If it's too dark, they would look too black and come forward too much. And number two, it would not have been worth our while painting a lot of perfect window shapes in the underpainting. Think ahead about how the underpainting is going to get used in the finished painting, so as not to spend a lot of time doing something that is going to get obliterated in the final painting. Knife painting has a lot of advantages over using a brush. You'll get more vibrant colors because your knife is instantly clean, and so you're going to have a lower risk of getting muddy colors. And you're also kind of working with a thicker layer of paint, usually. However, you don't have the same level of control that you have with a brush, so more is left to chance. What this means is don't expect to reproduce this painting exactly. Don't even try. Even if my dad did this exact painting again, it would not turn out the same. So here for this figure, the dark yellow is created with a mixture of cad yellow and dioxazine purple. The rickshaw here is a cad yellow light, and my dad chose cad yellow light to help create a subtle difference between the yellow cad yellow medium color in the t-shirt. You have to be prepared to give up any hope of depicting facial features. The vaguest hint of light on dark is all you're going to be able to do. You'll do a lot of back painting, like here, where the suggestion of the pedestrian's legs are depicted by painting the light sidewalk around them. We're always looking to paint light over dark where possible. For the lettering on the signs, don't even worry about trying to actually paint legible signs. Just suggest the lettering. The road here in the foreground is a mixture of Diox Purple and yellow, which is a reoccurring theme in the painting, but in this case also adding some white. The pavement is a perfect place to create some texture, leaving some bits of that underpainting showing through. It's also going to help carve out the rickshaw and the cars on the road. The background showing through to create some shadows from the vehicles and also to create texture. It's okay to use your fingers to smudge. Just don't lick your finger. Also, smudge sparingly. We want to show off some of the body or texture of the paint. Sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and make a bold mark. My dad decided that the buildings in the background ended up looking a bit too busy, a little messy, a little distracting. So thankfully, the slow drying time of oils allows you to manipulate the paint long after it's laid down on the canvas. And there you have it, the finished piece. We hope this demonstration was helpful. Please let us know if you have any questions about the process or materials in the comments. Also, let us know what you found to be the most helpful for your own painting practice. Happy painting!